Hello everyone. I'm going to talk to you today about something we at CCP have been developing for just over 2 years now. It's called the Eve effect. Uh, I myself, I am Hilmar Pétursson. I'm the CEO of CCP, and I actually had my 20-year anniversary of working for CCP this month of April. So the core purpose of CCP is to create virtual worlds more meaningful than real life. This is something we wrote down in 2008, and back then this was a bit of a stretch to say the least, and the company has been in a big internal debate about whether this is achievable purpose, a good purpose, and various aspects of that. And this Eve effect concept is actually something that has painted a bit of a path for us on how we could potentially reach this 100 years from now. So a little bit about EVE Online. EVE Online, as you might know, is an MMO released in 2003. It's going to turn 17 years old now next month in May. It has been going from strength to strength every year since it came out. And here are sort of maybe the secret sauce behind that. So I'm going to take you through that. I'm going to reference it a bit later. So EVE Online is an epic and beautiful world. You could argue it's the largest MMO, certainly when you look at a play map. It is very much famous for its sandbox gameplay, which creates this element of like you as a player can really play the game you want. This cuts both ways. EVE is both known for its freedom, but also for it's difficult to get into it and figure out what's the point really. There's a huge focus on digital social economies. The game is set in a future 20,000 years from now in a distant part of the galaxy that's kind of ill-defined, and in that future it is a capitalistic dystopian society. It's very much in that style, and that fits the setting very well, and also fits the goal of really kind of emphasizing the sandbox aspects. There is a well-documented aspect of EVE is that the game is quite harsh. You can lose decades of accumulative assets and gameplay in the game by making a mistake, and if you're not careful enough. The game is very social. Because of the nature of the world being harsh, the game being difficult, then people bond together and create very strong bonds, which I will be talking about a little bit as we move through this. And we have taken a very open approach with working with the community. A lot of the game post its release in May 6, 2003 has really been driven what the players are really taking the game. So this is actually our landing page from some years ago. I think this is maybe turning 10 years old. So EVE Online is known to be difficult, known to be complicated, and not very friendly for new players. This is an artist rendition of that taken from the internet. So this was probably drawn somewhere in 2006. Here were the MMOs at the time, and EVE Online is the black line here as you see it. It's telling in many ways. Of course, there is a bit of a learning cliff, but there is also an aspect here where, like, once you're to the top, it seems like an easy ride. You have a big bulldozer and you can kind of boss people around. And that is actually something we are really addressing these days. So every single year we get about 1 million people trying EVE Online for the first time, and our sort of veteran community, the people that have stayed with the game for decades, is maybe 1/10 of that. And so in a way you could argue that the challenge for new players is too high and the challenge for veterans is too low, going back to the picture we saw earlier. And the strategy of CCP is actually evening out these things so that we embrace the new players much better, and we increase the challenge for our veteran player base. So, but why are we all still playing EVE Online is a kind of a research question we started to put in motion 2 years ago. Of course, we had some idea. We had been running the game for 15 years at that point. But really, why, with some more precision, are we still playing EVE? Is it because of the huge fleet fight, which are what get the press? Here's a typical fleet fight in EVE Online. It looks like a soup of very expensive spaceships. And I mean, certainly that is an aspect of it. But it turns out there's a lot more to it. And out of this research, we came up with this, which we call the EVE effect. So it is the concept that EVE gives you friends and skills. So if you take it a little deeper, then we have connected this into Maslow hierarchy of needs. We love connecting things to the Maslow hierarchy of needs when we're talking about EVE Online. So at the sort of base layer of the Maslow hierarchy of needs, we have safety and fairness, law and belonging. And then on the top part, we have self-actualization, self-esteem, and those kind of things. And the EVE effect divides into what we call the friendship machine aspect of EVE Online. And here's a quote to represent that. My best bros helped me when I was down. And then the other aspect is called skills for life. EVE helped me get ahead in my professional life. So this we found out through our research is that 73% of EVE players have made new friends as a result of playing the game. And here we have pictures of EVE players coming together all over the world and often meeting each other for the first time after having spent decades playing the game together. And here are some quotes from our research study. I've been able to use EVE to meet other veterans. I really have someone to talk to. I'm holding off my wedding so I can fly my corp mate and his family over. I've been able to tool myself out of a dark hole because there were people there to help me. So I think this is true for many games, and I think people are even seeing this even more in these times we live in, where we're all physically distant but not socially isolated. But this seems to be, at least in our experience, quite emphasized when it comes to EVE. And out of this, we have this meme from the EVE community: the best ship in EVE is the friendship. And we have been sort of studying this more and more ever since we kind of came to this conclusion when we were doing this research, is that friendship is actually in risk of dying out in the world. There is this element called the loneliness epidemic, and it seems to be particularly true in large urban areas, large sort of metropolitan cities, where people have problems connecting. And games, and especially a game like EVE Online, seems to be increasingly where people come to find that type of connection. And to make sense of this all, we actually found this formula for friendship, and it involves proximity, frequency, duration, and intensity. So usually when you trace down people making a friend, you can see the friendship and the relationship, or a relationship evolving into friendship through these 4 components. And it's particularly this component, intensity, where EVE Online shines. And that is actually connected to this element of the game being hard, which I talked about earlier. Because the game is hard, you can experience a devastating loss. That becomes the moment where a friendship and a deep relationship in EVE can be formed. So, because it's really the relationships between players that are the reason why people are playing the game for decades. We often say people join for the graphics and they stay for the community. But often we thought about this community more like a kind of an abstract sense, but it really boils down to individual relationships within the game that create the retention factor. And also the tattoos. The tattoos are also a thing. And here we see an example of EVE players coming together. This is from our EVE FanFest, which we were going to have last month, but we cancelled that for coronavirus. Here are EVE players coming from all over the world, some people getting a passport for the first time to come to Iceland to meet in this massive space conference about EVE Online. And it often is this element of a devastating loss that becomes a turning point for people. So by losing your spaceship, making a mistake in the game that cost you everything that you've earned so far, if you have the social support to get out of that, that is really when you start to become an EVE player for real. There is another way out of it. Because of the harshness of the game, then if people experience a devastating loss, but they have an understanding of why, then through grit and resilience, something which EVE players also show in high demand and relates to the skill aspects, then you can dig yourself out of the hole and become whole again. So here are some examples of what loss in EVE Online means. A typical fleet fight like we showed before can involve assets in the game valued at, for example, this one, $300,000. So there's a lot of opportunity to have a devastating loss. Obviously, this is a loss in space money counted. This is not really dollars at play, but because the game has a virtual currency and we can kind of price the labor in the economy, then you can easily kind of calculate what the real world value would be. And here are some quotes to support this. The first time I realized this game was for me and I would stick around was when a group depended on me for an important task. It's actually an interesting aspect. EVE Online, of course, is known for the combat, competition, exploration, building things, but it's actually the highest proportion of the player base self-identify as helpers. They would like to help others. And it's really in a game that has so much opportunity for mistakes and loss and devastating moments, that is where helpers thrive. And it's actually, when we look at the people that self-identify as helpers, we see they have the highest amount of engagement. This quite surprised us. We would think that people doing combat or exploration would have the highest engagement in a space fighting trading game. But it turns out it is the people that would like to help others. And the EVE community is famous for helping others. We were recently running a collection of our space money, which we sometimes do when there is a disaster somewhere in the world for the bushfires in Australia. And one person gave a $33,000 equivalent through selling his spaceship, which we then cash out for real money to give to the collection. We're now running a collection around the current situation of the coronavirus. Players, there was an EVE player who lost his life in the Benghazi attack, and EVE players spontaneously came around and raised $100,000 to support his family. And then we have an endless amount of streaming events supporting various charities around the world, around the game. So this notion of building relationships is something that we are digging deeper and deeper into. Here is actually a picture of me at FanFest marrying two EVE players. Now our Space Pope takes care of that. Here the Space Pope is marrying two EVE players at EVE FanFest. His day job is being a knowledge officer at NASA, but by night he is the Space Pope. So the other aspect of the EVE effect is skills. So this kind of surprised us. I think we had kind of this idea that people stay for the community, and it turns out it's more tangible about the relationship between players than about the community as an abstract concept. But we knew EVE Online has a lot of elements of it's been known as Excel in space. It's been known as, it's known for big organizations, leadership, strategic planning, etc. This we kind of knew about the game and our players. Some of our players have frankly bigger CEO jobs than I do, running alliances in the game. But what surprised us is the level of anecdotes and stories we got from interviews and research about how many EVE players self-identified as the skills they learn in EVE Online having helped them get ahead in life. And we got this data out of that. 56% of EVE players have used skills they learned in EVE Online in real life. So managing people to complete a given goal, taught the value of friendship, multitasking, patience, concept of statistics. My boss adopted the spreadsheet for a whole department. These are anecdotes we get from our research. And out of the research we did, we came up with these kind of 3 categories of skills: hard skills, language skills, programming, Excel, data analysis, supply chain management. It's kind of fascinating when you think about it. We have an MMO that teaches you supply management, but if you play online, you know it's true. Writing and communication skills, propaganda skills, softer skills like judgment, decision making. Decision making has a lot to do with this element of harshness. You are bearing the consequences of your decisions. Leadership and management, coordination, communication, problem solving, trust, loyalty, curiosity, openness. So there's a lot we have identified. What people call out the most is Excel skills, Excel in space indeed, understanding the market in economics, leadership. 20% of EVE players mention leadership as something they've trained through EVE, teamwork, marketing, programming. Marketing, again, it's kind of interesting to think MMO would teach you about marketing. But again, if you play EVE Online, you can understand why. And according to EVE players, 72% say that skills that they acquired through playing EVE Online have gotten them better jobs. And here are some more examples. Put as much if you were to put as much effort into your real job as you do in your EVE job, you could have a big career. An interviewer proposed a design problem: how would you build a price comparison application? I did literally that week prior for EVE Online, and I mentioned that. Exactly, this is what you do in EVE. You build an application for price comparison. And this guy, he was building a database for finding arbitrage opportunities in the market in EVE, and he used that to get a job. Here's a guy. He runs a little startup in Canada that is now up to $8 million in his sort of overall portfolio, and at 87 profitability ratio. I wish we were that profitable with EVE. And he runs an Amazon kind of a reseller for mobile components. And he says here, he sent us a wonderful letter, just proactively. It was not a part of the research. Every single lesson he learned from EVE Online. So this is the EVE effect. This notion that a game like EVE, an MMO, can build your friends network and your skill set to make you the best version of yourself. So here's kind of a summary. Success in real life: 72% of EVE players think it's possible that the skills you acquire through EVE get you a better job. Using gaming skill in real life: 56% of EVE player base managed to use skill acquired through the game. Formation of meaningful friendships: 75% of players said the friendship they formed in EVE are very important. New friends through the community: 73% of EVE players they've made new friends through the network. So how do we apply these insights into improving EVE? So this element of magic moments, as I said before, devastating loss is where the journey for players begins. Either they leave the game, or they, through grit, pick themselves up, or they get social support. We actually now have an army of people, actual human people, that now execute magic moments inside EVE. So we have developed a system, so every time a new EVE player loses their ship, a custom support agent proactively comes to them and talks them through the experience. We have vastly improved our recruitment program now that we understand this friendship aspect. We are in development of an element to allow people to find fleets to fly with, which we have found is the first step into the friendship engine. And another project we have done is that now there's similar to the Magic Moments, is that there's a group of customer support agents that meet every single EVE player when they join the game for the first time and talk to them and give them gifts. All for this kind of human connection to build EVE, to build people up towards the friendship engine. Here are some lessons we have learned and I wanted to share with you all. So don't be afraid to make your game difficult, complicated, challenging. It might take you in unexpected territory. And don't be afraid to let your users take you to unexpected directions. That has very much been the case with EVE. A lot of the development in EVE over the past 17 years after we released the game has been driven by inspirations from the community. And virtual worlds are like good whiskey, they get better with age. EVE is having some of its biggest moments these days. We have never had as many people join the game. We've never had as many people rejoin the game. And we are now putting in motion strategies that set EVE Online up for growth and success for the third decade. The friends you make in a tight-knit community like EVE, they're real. The skills you make, they're real skills. You can take control of your life and reality through the elements you play in EVE. So, and then I want to end on this note, in these special times we live in, where I'm talking to you here from remote. EVE Online's community is legendary for coming together in times of hardship, when their collective strengths can be used to further a good cause. We encourage our community to play safe and look out for each other. This is really doesn't need to be said. This is just what EVE players do by default. And like I was saying earlier, we are now seeing droves of people coming back to the game, given the current situation, and we're very happy to be playing that part. The best ship in EVE is friendship, so stay connected with one another in game or otherwise, and protect against loneliness. Fly safe. Thank you, and EVE forever.